When it comes to understanding the boys, most people learn a lot about Homelander and Soldier Boy and call it a day, but the most dangerous supes aren't even the ones we see on the posters. Today we're going to break down everything we know about each of them. Let's get into it. Homelander is the most powerful supe on the show, and one of the most threatening characters in superhero television. The breakdown of what he can do is significant. Flight at speeds that make him functionally impossible to escape. Laser vision hot enough to cut through almost any material the show has put in front of it. Puts him in a completely different weight class from nearly everyone else alive. Superhuman hearing sharp enough to track conversations from blocks away. X-ray vision, a healing factor that makes most forms of physical damage barely worth attempting, and the durability to sustain all of it in extended combat. But most people who've watched all 4 seasons will tell you his most dangerous quality isn't in that list. It's the fact that nobody can actually control him anymore. Vought spent decades managing John through psychological manipulation, a carefully maintained public image, and the implicit threat of what exposure would do to his brand. He was conditioned from childhood to need approval and to perform for the public in ways that kept him predictable. The moment that conditioning started breaking down, what you were left with was a man who can melt your face from 100 feet up, who knows exactly what he is and who has run out of reasons to pretend. What makes him so frightening isn't the power ceiling, it's the trajectory. Every season he moves further from the version Vought built and closer to whatever's actually underneath it. By season 4, he's not performing anymore. Season 5 hasn't even started. Most people underestimate Queen Maeve the moment they put her next to Homelander. That's understandable. On paper, she loses that matchup. But you have to understand what Maeve actually is before you write her off as second tier. She's strong enough to flip a city bus without breaking a sweat. Durable enough to take direct hits from Homelander and stay functional. Fast enough that regular humans can't meaningfully track her movement. And unlike most members of the Seven, she actually knows how to fight, not the choreographed Vought performance version of fighting where everything is staged for cameras. Real, practical, brutal, close quarters work developed over years of actually using her powers in situations that mattered. That last part is what people underestimate. There's a significant difference between someone who hits hard and someone who actually knows how to fight. Maeve is both. The way she moves in a real exchange shows technique built from experience, not training rooms. Against most opponents in the show's universe, she's the most dangerous person present. Against Homelander specifically, the gap in their respective ceilings is real, and she knows it better than anyone. What the show does with her across 4 seasons is uniquely interesting. Maeve starts as someone who sold out everything she believed in just to survive inside Vought's machine. She stopped fighting publicly because she understood that fighting Homelander directly was suicide, and deciding it's worth it anyway doesn't change the math. By the time season 3 ends, she's the one who lands the decisive blow that ends the standoff with Soldier Boy. She takes his blast to stop him, loses her powers permanently as a result, and walks away human. Annie January is probably the most straightforwardly decent character on the show. And in a story this cynical about what power does to people, that's actually a harder position to write than it sounds. It would be easy to make her naive. The show keeps finding ways to make her clear-eyed instead. Her power is light. She absorbs electricity from any source in her immediate environment and releases it as concentrated blasts. When fully charged, she's insanely dangerous, capable of outputs that can stagger even physically superior supes. She doesn't have the raw strength of the upper tier, but she's more versatile than her reputation suggests. And she's one of the very few characters on the show who demonstrably gets stronger across seasons as she stops limiting herself to what Vought trained her to believe she was capable of. What Starlight represents in the story is someone who came in truly believing the mythology, the heroism, the calling, the idea that being a Supa meant being chosen for something that mattered, and had to survive the process of learning it was all constructed to sell merchandise and defense contracts. The standard response to that revelation in this show is to either collapse inward or become complicit in the machine. Starlight does neither. She figures out how to fight from inside it, and by season 4 she's doing it publicly, loudly, in ways that cost her the career and the identity Vought spent years building around her name. There's a moment in season 3 where she's told she's not brave enough to walk away from Vought, and she walks out in front of a crowd of people and tells the truth on camera. That scene is the show arguing without much irony for once that the hardest kind of courage isn't physical. The refusal to stop being herself in a system specifically designed to replace her with a more manageable version is its own category of power. A-Train is one of the most complicated characters the show has, and it doesn't always get the credit it deserves for how seriously it takes him. He's the fastest person alive. At peak, he's running at the speed of sound, but speed at that magnitude isn't just a travel ability, it's a weapon with consequences the show refuses to let you forget. Robin's death in the very first episode isn't filmed as an accident in the casual sense. It's filmed as what inevitably happens when that much force meets a human body. A-Train knows exactly what he did, he knows what it means, and the show makes you sit with both his guilt and his stubborn, sustained refusal to actually reckon with what it cost someone else. His arc across 4 seasons is about what happens when the one thing that defines you starts to go. He pushed past his body's limits for years, using Compound V to stay competitive against younger, fresher talent. It nearly kills him. He ends up needing a heart transplant from a black man whose death he was complicit in, which the show doesn't let him walk away from cleanly. That detail is one of the sharpest things the show does with any character. It's not just guilt, it's the consequence of what he did living inside his own chest, keeping him alive every day. Season 4 shows him sincerely trying to do something meaningful with whatever time he has left. He uses his platform in ways that actually cost him. He makes choices that can't be walked back. Like, whether that arc fully earns its resolution is a conversation the show is still having, but A-Train is the strongest argument in the series, that nobody is just one thing, and that knowing better doesn't automatically make doing better easy. The show never lets him off the hook, it just lets him try. The Deep is the easiest character on the show to dismiss as comic relief. That's exactly what the show wants you to do, and it uses that assumption to keep doing more with him than you expect. His power is aquatic. He breathes underwater. He has enhanced strength and durability that make him physically capable in a straight fight, and he can communicate with and direct sea life, which sounds like a joke until you watch him use it seriously. He pulls a whale onto a highway in season 2 and uses it to destroy a vehicle at speed. He redirects marine creatures to intercept threats. When the Deep actually applies his power with real intent, the scale of what he can do is something the show keeps deliberately burying under layers of self-sabotage and humiliation. The Gil subplot is one of the show's more quietly effective choices. Making him self-conscious about a physical feature that is objectively interesting is the show's way of saying that the Deep has been taught to be ashamed of the most unique thing about him. He's so desperate to be the version of himself that Vought marketed that he can't engage with the version he actually is. The Deep is the show's sharpest argument about entitlement without accountability over a lifetime. He was exceptional and told he was exceptional from the beginning, and he never had to build anything underneath it. He assaulted Starlight in the first episode and has never fully faced what that was. Every time the show humiliates him, it's doing it with the receipts in hand. The audience laughs because it's funny, and then the show makes sure you remember why it isn't. Black Noir has strength, speed, and combat ability at the top of the show's physical range. He's a trained killer who would be dangerous without any powers at all, and the powers made him close to unstoppable in direct confrontation. He moves without sound, absorbs punishment that would end most characters, and has never shown anything close to fear in a fight. When he goes after Kimiko in season 2 and she survives, it's one of the most effective demonstrations of just how extreme her healing factor actually is, because what she survives is Noir operating without holding back. But the show eventually tells you something about him that reframes everything. Behind the mask is someone whose entire interior life has been defined by what Vought made him do and the psychological damage that accumulated across decades of doing it. The cartoon animal hallucinations aren't random quirks. They're the show telling you this man created a dissociative internal world because the alternative was complete collapse. He was a weapon. He knew he was a weapon. He never had the option of being anything else. He dies in season 3 when Homelander kills him for hiding the truth about Soldier Boy. Noir protected John from information that would have hurt him. Homelander kills him for it. There's no cleaner summary of what it means to serve John than that moment. Now here's someone that people argue about the most. Soldier Boy. His physical capabilities are at the very top of the show's range, like Homelander adjacent strength and durability. 40 years of Russian experimentation couldn't break him. He took direct hits from Homelander at Herogasm and kept getting up. And then there's the nuke blast, the ability to release a nuclear level burst of energy that permanently strips Compound V from a Supe's biology. It's the only offensive weapon in 4 seasons of television that Homelander has actively run away from. But Soldier Boy is also 80 years of American mythology built directly on top of a deeply ugly man. He abused his team for decades. He was present for and complicit in atrocities. He operated on the assumption that his strength made him the standard by which everything else should be measured, and he spent his entire life being fundamentally wrong about that in ways he was never forced to confront until season 3 took everything away from him. Most people sleep on Kimiko. That's a mistake. Her healing factor operates at a speed and completeness that almost nothing else in the show's universe can match. She survived gunshots, stab wounds, blasts, and physical trauma that would be fatal to nearly any other Supe. That regeneration, combined with enhanced strength that lets her compete directly with much larger opponents, makes her seriously dangerous in ways people tend to underestimate until she's already ended the fight. But the show's actual investment in Kimiko isn't her power ranking. It's the question she carries across all 4 seasons about identity and agency. She was a child when Compound V was forced on her by the same organization that destroyed everything she knew. Her abilities aren't a gift, and the show never frames them as one. They're the mark of what was done to her without her consent. The dancing sequences and musical fantasy moments are doing specific work. They're not just stylistic choices, they're the show depicting what it looks like for someone to imagine a version of herself that exists outside of what was made of her. The relationship with Frenchie is the show's most consistent argument that connection is possible even after severe damage. Soldier Boy's blast temporarily removes Kimiko's healing factor in season 3, and the show uses that window not as a power setback, but as an exploration of who she is without the armor. The answer it finds is more complete than most of the show's other characters ever get to. Here's the one that should really unsettle you, Victoria Neuman. Her power is biological telekinesis. She can detonate human tissue from a distance with a thought. No visible effort, no charging time, no warning that it's coming. One moment someone is standing in front of her and then they simply aren't anymore. She did it to an entire congressional hearing room full of people in the season 2 finale, and it took until season 3 for anyone to know it was her. What makes her uniquely dangerous is the arena she operates in. Physical power is mostly irrelevant in politics. What matters is access, leverage, and the ability to shape what people believe is possible. Neuman has all 3 of those, and she has the power to eliminate anyone who becomes a problem without leaving any evidence. A Supe embedded at the highest levels of government who can kill anyone anywhere in public and make it look like a medical event is a category of threat the show hadn't introduced before her. And then there's Ryan, the one I think the whole show has actually been building toward. He's the first naturally born Supe. His mother was fully human, his father's Homelander, and what came out of that combination is a child who inherited the complete power set without the decades of laboratory conditioning and psychological engineering that shaped how Homelander developed, laser vision, flight, strength at a level that's still being established. All of it in a kid who grew up in a house with a mother who tried to give him something real. The show's genuine interest in Ryan isn't his power ceiling, it's the question of who he's going to choose to be. Homelander had no one who actually loved him without conditions. Ryan had Becca. He has the version of himself she spent years quietly protecting. His intervention in the season 3 finale to stop Homelander wasn't a demonstration of force. It was a child making a choice about identity in the worst possible circumstances in front of the most powerful and emotionally volatile person alive. Now here's one people don't talk about enough. Lamplighter. He can generate and direct fire at levels that make him unbelievably dangerous in direct confrontation. He held the spot in the 7 that Starlight eventually takes, which tells you where Vought placed him on the value hierarchy before things fell apart. The thing that fell apart is that he burned Mallory's grandchildren to death while trying to kill her. It was an accident in the mechanical sense and an atrocity in every other sense, and the guilt of it followed him in ways he couldn't metabolize or outrun. By the time the story catches up with him, he's at the Sage Grove Center conducting experiments on captive supes for Stormfront. He knows what he's doing is wrong. The show doesn't give him the grace of ignorance. He's doing terrible things with full awareness that they're terrible, and he keeps doing them anyway because the machine he's inside doesn't offer him a door out and he stopped looking for one. Most people forget about Mindstorm. They shouldn't. He's from Payback, Soldier Boy's old team, and his power is the ability to trap a person inside a recursive nightmare. Physical contact is all it takes. Once he has you, you're locked in your own worst memories on a loop with no mechanism for escape unless he chooses to release you or dies. He's the reason Soldier Boy spent years in a waking nightmare during the Russian captivity period. Think about what that actually means. Years, not hours, not days. Your worst memories cycling inescapable indefinitely. He goes out the way most supporting Supies go out on this show, quickly, without ceremony, neutralized before he can become a larger problem. Sister Sage, her power is intelligence at a scale that operates outside normal human parameters. She doesn't just process faster, she models complex outcomes, reads behavioral patterns, anticipates the second and third order consequences of decisions before anyone else in the room has even made them. Homelander recruits her in season 4 because he's perceptive enough to understand that raw power has a ceiling, and he needs someone who can build the kind of long-term strategic architecture he can't construct himself. What makes her genuinely interesting rather than just a functional plot device is the voluntary lobotomy. Yes, she periodically has her own brain physically altered just to feel ordinary for a while. The show is saying something real with that. Genius at her level isn't a superpower in the heroic sense. It's closer to a chronic condition. Being the most strategically conscious person in every room she enters, looks from the inside like a form of isolation that nothing else can reach. The smartest person in the world doesn't get to stop being that. The lobotomy is the only vacation she knows how to take. Firecracker is one of the most deliberately ordinary supes the show has put on screen, and that ordinariness is exactly what makes her interesting. Her actual superpower is negligible. She generates a small spark by snapping her fingers. In any room with Homelander, Soldier Boy, Stormfront, or half a dozen others, she's the least physically relevant person present, and she has no illusions about it. The show doesn't pretend otherwise, and neither does she. What she does have is media instinct sharp enough to make up for everything her powers lack. She's a conspiracy theorist, a provocateur, someone who understood before most people how to build an audience out of resentment and keep it loyal through escalation. She attached herself to Homelander's orbit in season 4 because proximity to his power is the only strategic move available to her. The history between her and Starlight adds a layer the show uses well. The two of them have a past that explains where Firecracker's particular fixation comes from, and it reframes her as someone driven by something more personal than pure ideology. She's not just a media villain, she's someone who decided that if she couldn't win the legitimate way, she'd build an audience that makes winning the legitimate way irrelevant. In the show's world, where public perception of Supies is a real lever of power, that's more dangerous than it sounds. Popclaw has a small role in season 1, but she might be the most important death in the entire first season. Here's why. She has retractable bone claws extending from each wrist and enhanced strength that, on Compound V, exceeds what she can fully control. That control problem is directly how her landlord dies, which is how the boys get the leverage they need to use her as a source. She was a teenage celebrity, a member of Teenage Kicks during the period when that mattered, before a drug scandal destroyed her career and left her dependent on a relationship with A-Train that was never going to protect her. The show uses Popclaw specifically to show you what A-Train is underneath the speed. She loved him. She was protecting him. Yeah, she told the boys what they needed to know because A-Train convinced her it would lead to them going public as a couple. He killed her with multiple heroin injections the moment she became a liability, using his speed, so it was over before she understood what was happening. Yes, her death moves fast. It's supposed to. That's how the show wants you to feel it. The show doesn't frame that as heroism or villainy. It just shows you and then kills him in the most undignified way possible so you can't turn him into a symbol. Most people, given extraordinary ability and no accountability, would do something way less complicated than saving the world. If you want every one of these Supies ranked from weakest to most powerful in an actual fight, that breakdown is on screen right now.